Good morning. I'm Bradley McAllister, founder of Spiracraft. This is Monday Methods on Monday, what is it, May 24th. It's a nice day here late in May. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everything's working on the stream. I haven't been in here in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to today's project. This is a recovery project. I think it's perfect because we all know that things go bad sometimes, and this is a classic case. Good morning, Don. Good morning, Rich. Good morning, Brian. I thought I saw Art in there somewhere too. I had a lot of fun yesterday figuring this mess out, but I was able to recover, and that's what it's all about. Making a little recovery from an error. If you saw the videos, there's Art. Good morning, Art. If you saw the little video post yesterday, so I had a disaster, minor disaster with my stabilizing piece here, my stabilizing resin. As we know, if you don't know, you'll learn quickly, even though we talk about it and it's in the instructions. You do not want to allow your stabilizing resin to get above, say, 80 to 85 degrees. Art, you were late for the intro. You missed it. Don't let your stabilizing resin get above 80, 85 degrees. How come? It will crystallize. What does it look like when it crystallizes? It looks like this. It makes a mess out of a beautiful pot. I'll show you the mess in overhead there. I was able to save the blank. I was not able to save the aluminum pot. All right. Now the beauty is, to me, the piece is what's really important. I can buy another pot. It didn't affect the lid or the gauges or anything like that. I just had to saw the pot in half and pry it apart. Hey Jeff, good morning. So yeah, I can't remember what the pot costs. I'm gonna say 30, 40 bucks, maybe 50 bucks, I'm not sure. The money is in the glass top and the vacuum gauge and the plumbing for a vacuum chamber. The pot, they're good pots. I mean, I was surprised at how thick the walls are and how these things are constructed. I'm really impressed. They're great. But I have been gone for literally 2 weeks or 10 days again or something, and I didn't think to either one, move this pot in. This has been soaking since we dropped it in on Monday Methods. It's been soaking for weeks, and it was nice and cool when I left, and I just didn't think turn the air conditioning on out here or carry the pot into the house where the AC was on, where it wouldn't get so hot. And it came out 2 nights ago when we got home, and I looked at it and I went, oh my. So I thought, well, I can save this if I can get it out, and trying to pry it out was not going to happen. That just wasn't, that wasn't going there. So I decided to cut the pot in half and pry the piece out, and I was able to go through a series of stages of cleaning and prying and chipping, and I've been able to get 99% of the excess stabilizing resin off. Now, this is not optimum. This is not what I had in mind for having these yellow crystals here, but it's not the end of the world either, all right? You know, I had some plans for this to do something different to it, and I thought about it, and I said, well, you know, I think we'll just leave it go like this. It's still better than the alternative of not having it at all. I was able to get all the extra stabilizing resin out of here to clean that up. We're going to turn this away. This morning we're going to turn this little stem off, and we're going to turn the piece a little bit more to make it fit into our molds, our double mold. Let me pop back up here and read the things. Michael, good morning, Michael. What's Jeff saying? After hearing this, I moved my stabilizing rat back to the basement. Yes. So all the Spiracraft stabilizing resin that is for sale, etc., stays in an air-conditioned room. It's 72 or less in there. Here's surprising. The pot set up, and I actually have a little bit that I had out here in another jug. This is some of the older version. I think this is actually stick fast, and it didn't set up so far. So I don't know. It's one of those things, but you hear about it all the time. Don't leave it where it's warm. Some people talk about don't even leave it next to the pump. Okay? Your vacuum pump can get too hot and start to crystallize. So this was the first time it's ever happened to me. Lesson learned. Gallon and a half of resin and a pot out the window. Okay, so be it. What do we do now? We're going to move right along. I'm going to, like I say, turn away this little center stem here, and I need to do a little bit more turning because here is our mold. Now this is green. It's probably going to look kind of funky color. I found a chroma key. I'm not sure. I'll watch and see when it comes up on the monitor. But this is a freshly picked up bucket from the store. That's our outer mold, and this piece is our inner mold. Yes, I went to the Dollar Tree where everything is $1, right? And disposable molds. This piece is going to end up right side up. I'll put it in upside down. It's going to be in the center. It's going to displace our resin from the center. And the bowl is going to go in the inside. The whole piece is going to go in the big bucket. The whole idea here is to not use any more resin than necessary. We don't want to waste the resin. And all I really need to do is fill the voids. I'm not trying to have a total resin outside. I want the wood showing on this piece. So that's how this is going to work. I've never done the resin thing. Jeff Mass. Oh, it's a ton of fun. Good morning, Todd Hall. Dutchman's Woodshack. Jeff Walsma. Thank you for joining in this morning. And then I see my mom's here. Mom says, looking to see how you can finish it. Mom knows I'll always come up with something. So the first order of business this morning, two steps. Take away the little stem right here in the end, and then make room for this piece to fit down inside of here, like that, and turn the outside to where it fits in the bucket. Mold, I shouldn't call it a bucket, it's a mold, to where I know it touches the bottom, okay? So we've got just a little bit of work to do there. And Dad says, watching closely. Y'all trying to jinx me today. Okay, let's see. Everything looking good, sounding good? I guess so. Nobody's screaming they can't hear me or anything. So let's do some turning to start with, all right? I wanted to stay in my flip-flops, but I went ahead and put my shoes on just because. Stabilizing resin is really hard. Here's another thing, a point to bring up on this. I have heard, and I don't have solid information on this, so I'm not going to tell you that it's gospel. I have heard that if you start stabilizing a piece, start the curing process, cooking it in the oven, which I did yesterday. I cooked this for 3 hours yesterday at 220 degrees. If you start the curing process, it's a heat cure, and you don't get all the way in, heat all the way to the center of the wood, and then you stop and you try it again, it doesn't work. I don't really understand that, and I'm not going to claim to, but here's my real question about this one. So it crystallized itself. And inside the mass, it was much harder, much more brittle than the outer. The outer was still kind of pliable. So I don't know how that turned out. Did it truly cure on the very inside of this? I'm thinking it did, because everything on it is hard. And just for a point of reference, I want to grab, where's my chisel? I cleaned up and put things away, and I can't find anything, of course. Well, I'll use my ice pick. And I want to show you this. When I first took it out of the oven, or I checked it at one point, and these areas here were actually kind of pliable when they were at 220 degrees. Any of these little areas here. And I thought, well, once it cools down, what's going to happen? And sure enough, they're quite hard now. Okay, and the wood is quite hard. Another interesting thing to think about, and I don't have an explanation yet, this was yellow dye, as you can see. There's the yellow dyed stabilizing resin, and I'm going to say this piece is maple. I could be wrong. because it was so rotted. It didn't appear to have taken the color much. If you look here on the end, you would think that this wood here should be that kind of yellow, and it didn't take the yellow. Don't know why yet. Who knows? And this is the outside of it. But I know one thing for sure. The resin did penetrate because I watched it drink over an inch of resin out of the pot in depth over time as it soaked the wood in. And it also is very heavy now. It's much, much heavier than it was before. And where I was going with this resin is much harder durometer-wise than the epoxy or the urethanes that we cast in and turn decoratively. So it really takes a toll on the tools. I'll be using the Easy Wood tools with a negative rate cutter to trim this up, clean this up. I have some freshmen if I have to put them on. I'm trying not to abuse a brand new one if I don't have to. But let's get going, and let's take... I think I'll do the outside first. We'll get so I can have the tailstock in place for a little added safety. And I actually have one of the Sorby live step drive revolving step centers in here today. And I tested this a little while ago. And because it is by nature out of balance, you can see that rock there in the camera at 300. But as I bring it up to around 5, I have just a minor shimmy. That's 575. 650. It was smoother before I took all the resin off. There's 800. I want as fast as I can safely. It doesn't look like that's shaking too bad in the cameras. I mean, I can see it shaking, but I'm going to switch here to an overhead view, and I want to see what you guys see in about 20 seconds. Let's see. Rich is greater than 3 in the resin. Crocs. And Art says, look in the drawer. What am I missing, Art? So that doesn't appear to be shaking too badly as I see it come up. I can see my fingers shaking, but that looks pretty steady. And all I want to do is make this small enough that the mold will fit over top of it. So I think we're pretty good there. That doesn't look too crazy. And if I take it to the end view, you see a little vibration, but it's not too bad. My hand looks all right. Things look in focus. Okay. So we'll stop that for a second. I'm going to clean up my goggles. So what's everybody been doing? I've been away. I've been on vacation. I've been out studying Vincent van Gogh, watching immersive experiences and having a wonderful time. I could have stayed in Florida at the beach for a long time. Had some wonderful visits down there. Saw some people I hadn't seen in a long time. The weather was perfect. We'd be sitting out on the hotel veranda at midnight with a nice breeze. It was great. Rich says, spray some DNA or mineral spirits on it. Should be brighten up any color that it did take. Yeah, we'll do that, Rich. I'll throw something on it and we'll see if it pops it out. Art says, when trying to find something, always check the drawer. Well, yeah, my stuff's always in the drawer. Jeff says, looks not too bad. I can see slight out of shape from your tool fence. Yeah, it's actually round, but it's got flat spots on it and all kinds of stuff. Let me see if I can find some denatured alcohol here real quick, and see if Rich Bolduc, he does a lot of this, and see if we get some color in the wood to pop up, just for yucks. Just for yucks. My little bottle is empty. And where is my other bottle? My DNA. It's around here somewhere. If I can't find it right off, we'll just move along. As I look quickly, and I'm not seeing it. But it's in the drawer, right, Art? Art says it's in the drawer. Except that the bottle is in the drawer, but the bottle is empty. One more place to look. Oh, over here. Looky here. I have too many things in too many places. Okay, Rich, here comes some denatured alcohol on this guy. Let's see if it pops any color out of it. A little bit. There's a little bit in there. Not as yellow as I anticipated. More on a brown. You know, knowing how I like color, I was hoping for yum, bright shark yellow and all that stuff. But I'm going to use the dye today, the color, I'm just going to very lightly tint my resin, and I'm going to use marine blue, but real translucent, not too heavy. And I think I'm going to put just a dash of iridescent gold pearl into it, just a little teeny dash. I even went so far, and you guys know I usually just to shake it out, I went so far as to get out my little spoon for measuring, which you won't be able to see because of the color, that my dear mother provided. I finally found it again. So I want to put just a little sprig in there. Okay? But let's go ahead and make some chips here, make a mess real quick. Get on our safety goggle. We'll put you in overhead. Because I was talking and doing some other things, I'm going to check that I made everything tight. Tighten up that chuck a little bit. I was on the phone until just before we came on live here. Okay. I have a negative rake, Easy Wood Tools negative rake. I do not know how fresh or sharp it is. All I want to do is get this down into the bowl. I've wondered about leaving the flats or taking the flats away. And I'm still debating it in my mind, because it would be kind of interesting to leave the flats, because that'll make a pocket of resin. Now they may get turned away, because I don't know how much I'm really going to turn away on this once it's cast and it comes back out of the mold. That's a whole nother part of the world. But we're just going to take and utilize the same basic shape and just take a little bit away from the whole piece. This up here is all air. And it is hard as a rock. Now I am disappointed. Wrong button, Brad. Too many buttons to play with this morning. I am disappointed when I was taking out this excess crystallized stabilized resin. I don't know, you may remember I had a paper thin rim. It was about less than an eighth of an inch thick that went from here to here. And that broke away, and that's the sad thing, but we're just going to fill it with the resin and it'll be okay. It would have been really cool to keep that whole top intact around there, but I was not so lucky, so I'm not going to cry about it. One thing I am going to do real quick is I'm going to rotate this cutter and see if I get a fresher edge, if it cuts any better. It's not doing a whole lot of cutting. And I'll pop back over here while I'm talking to you. Let's see, what's going on the screen? Trying to learn new ways, Jeff? I'm always trying to help show folks new ways to do things. You're new here, I do believe. I don't know if you've been here before with me. One of the things I really like to do, and I know this sounds strange, I don't mind when something goes wrong. Matter of fact, I kind of like it when something goes wrong, because things go wrong in everybody's shop. And when I can help you find a way to overcome something, just like this is the perfect case for me. I don't know how to word it without sounding arrogant. I kind of feel like I'm the master of recovering from mistakes, because they happen, and I won't throw one away. Well, most of the time. if a piece had a split in it, I would give it to my dad when Dad and I used to turn in the same shop. But other than that, I like to try and fix things and work with them and make them work. So let's see if that we get a better cut there. Back to the overhead. Oh, that's a little better. Now, I'm not worried about this being perfect or anything because I envision turning it down even smaller once it's cast. So what I'm going to do now is check it, see if it's ready to drop all the way down into the mold yet or not. Does it make it to the bottom? This is the hard part to try and kind of tell. Not yet. Because the whole idea is not to waste any resin. But you don't want to have it overly large either. And I'm kind of looking in and it's still touching right in here. So a little bit more. Little bit more. They'd look at me real strange when I'm in the Dollar Tree or the dollar store looking for any kind of thing that's plastic that I can use as a mold. They said, "Sir, can I help you? Can I help you find something?" I go, "Well, I'm looking for this or that, a mold that's these dimensions." "Well, what are you going to do with it?" "Well, I'm going to fill it full of resin and wood." Good morning, Dwayne. Dwayne says, "What happened to the resin?" Well, Dwayne, my stabilizing resin crystallized on me while I was away out of town because I didn't keep the air on and it got too warm over the 80-degree mark, and the stabilizing resin crystallized in the pot. And since you're just popping in here, there's what the pot looked like. I had to saw the pot in half and pry the piece out. So I lost the pot and I lost a gallon and a half of resin, but I saved the piece of wood. Always important, save the piece of wood. Oh, and I got something jumped up on my screen over on my chat box that I have to get rid of, my chat screen, because I can't see the last entry. Does this go into the mold bottom side up? No, it will go in the other way, Art. So it's a little tough to gauge exactly. But I'm going to take it off and check, which is my next move, and see where I'm at. I'm just kind of waiting to the, I wanted to do what I think is going to be enough before I take it off, because then, you know, if I don't get it recentered perfectly. Oh, thank you, Dwayne. It's going to look real cool when it comes out of the very light blue epoxy resin tomorrow, come out of the pressure pot. And so what's going to happen is we'll cast this up today and I'll put it in the pressure pot overnight and I'll pop it out tomorrow. Then next Monday on Monday Methods, we'll pull it out, I'll have it out and we'll turn it. Okay, so this is just, I mean, this is perfect, guys. So I drop this down in, it drops all the way to the bottom. So now it's sitting on the tenon here, drops all the way down to the bottom of the pot. And if you can see, there's virtually no play, but there is gaps around it down in there so that the resin will flow all the way around. So that is exactly what I'm looking for the fit for this piece. All right. Now the next thing is to take the center out. Now here's another thing that you may ask. The resin gig seems to be so complicated. Jeff, it's not so much complicated as it is finicky. Kind of a black art, but one you shouldn't be scared of. It's got a lot of variables and control. It's not complicated, but it has ramifications, as you can see, if things don't go just right. It's more about a controlled environment. That would have never happened in a controlled environment. Controlled environment is 80% of the battle, I think, in the resin world with things and how they set up, how they cure, on and on. So that's one of the most important things. Somebody might ask, because I'm not going to measure the volume of this. How much resin do I need? I'm going to make a 15-ounce batch, which I'm certain won't be enough, but it might be. I'm not going to take the time to do the rice and try and figure it out, especially because in this case, I can't get below the piece going down into the mold. So it'd be really hard to play with how much volume is down there. So I'm going to make a 15-ounce batch, and then whatever I need extra, I'll make another batch. And if I have extra left over, well, then I'll mold up some other little molds, so it won't go to waste. So instead of trying to figure it out, I'm just going to go ahead and make a batch of resin and then add to it, so that I don't need to know how much I need. It's going to be okay. So let's take this back out of the mold and put it back in the chuck. Now this is going to be the interesting part, is getting this little post turned away here, and cleaning up the bottom a little bit, and then fitting it for the next mold, which this is going to go in the other way. So we're going to have to open this up. We want this to sit in like so to displace the resin from the inside. So back into the chuck we go. And that looks okay. And so you'll be watching from this view as we go to get rid of that post. So let me double check this is nice and tight enough. Just as I have lots of split bowls and I want to save them, but just don't have the pressure cooker, and I just wanted to fill the gaps and not use the resin on the whole thing. Jeff, we carry at Spirocraft, we carry Chroma epoxy resin. It is a gel resin, and it's very thick. It's very viscous. It doesn't pour like a liquid. It literally is a gel, and that works great for filling big cracks. If you don't want to do the pressure pot routine and cast the whole piece, you can jump on the Spirocraft page at spirocraft.com, go to casting resins and look at the gel. And that gel, and you can color it with any of the pigments. It acts just like any other resin, except that its viscosity is really thick. And I want to say that, well, on a cold day, it literally won't run hanging in a vertical surface. On a hot day, it will move a little bit, but it's nothing like trying to pour liquid. So it really works well for doing cracks in bowls. You can color it. You can put pearl powders in it. You can put glitters in it, anything like that, and then sand it, turn it, sand it, whatever. And it's great for filling cracks and making decorative inlays like that on difficult shapes and forms and in different planes. Yeah, I understand it, because it's spendy to get in here a little bit. There's always a way, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Message me through Messenger, call Spirocraft, numbers on the page. Happy to talk to you about the different options you've got to do work with the resin and fill your cracks. I've done a bunch of them. I've got lots of little methods that work well. Okay, so to take this out, I'm just not sure which is going to be my best choice. And I think what I want to do, guys, I'm going to change a cutter here real quick. I should have done this earlier. I'm going to go to my #1 hollower with a small CI5 cutter from Easywood. And that's going to let me get in there and just kind of pare this thing away. I can't do it sideways, but I'm going to put on a CI5 negative rake, and I'm going to use one that's not new if I can get away with it here. I should be able to find one here in the pile. There's one. And here's my wrench. So I'll make a quick cutter change here. And my ice pick. So if a good time for more questions, if you've got them while I'm changing this cutter out real quick. Always clean out the screw so that you don't strip out the screw or strip the end off of your Allen wrench for your cutters. There we go. And optimally, if you're putting on a new cutter out of the package, go ahead and change the screw out. I'm just swapping cutters, so I'll use the same screw. Hopefully this cutter's got some life in it. Try not to drop it down in the chips and all that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to how this piece comes out. I love making these pieces. I like weird, goofy, organic shapes. They make my day, so to speak. I have a lot of fun with them. It lets me be creative. Do things outside the box and all that good stuff. Okay, so end view for you. Sip of water for me. Need to make the screws and cutters smaller so you can lose them easier? Yeah, no doubt. So we're going to set this at the center axis. It looks like it's a little low. And what I'm going to do is come at this at an angle and cut as much away as I can, as low as I can, and then we'll just come straight at it. So there I am at the center. So I'm going to find as much angle over here as I can with the tool without hitting my rim, and I'm just going to start to kind of cut away in here. Again, this stuff is really hard now. And I want to tell you something here. I had the option, and I thought about it, of using the CI7 cutter and a negative rake, the really pointy one. The reason I chose not to, in case anybody's wondering, if it gets a catch, because it's much more prone to catch, especially doing something like this. If I got a catch, I ran the risk of breaking more of this rim off in here. So I decided let's go a little safer route, which is not really normal for me. Usually I'm the least worried about that. But I decided to try and make sure I kept this intact, so that's why I went with the smaller CI5. It's a little more forgiving. I still got a fair bit of wood to get out of here. But we'll get there. kind of noisy, kind of bumpy down in there. I wish I could just go right through the hole, you know, but obviously that doesn't work. I'm going to save this. We're going to make something out of this. We've got another little something here that's kind of cool. So we're going to get another little teeny bottle stopper. This would be a great bottle stopper. So that right-hand side of this cutter is acting a little dull. So I'm actually going to rotate it real quick. Again, I'm trying not to put on a fresh one for just this abusive work. I can tell it's working hard in there because the tool is actually quite hot. So I'm just rotating this cutter real quick. Again, this stabilizing resin is amazingly hard. Give that cutter a roll. See if we get a fresher edge there. What's Rich say? Rather, you probably just flatten out that bottom of the inside and then hot glue the plastic container to seal it with hot glue. I got a plan not to have to hot glue it, Rich, if it works. Using my skewer method, if it works today. All right. Back in we go. Oh, much better. People always ask, how do you know when a carbide cutter's dull? When it's not cutting like it used to. There it goes. Cool beans. So, what do we got? Just a funky little piece there. Kind of cool. Lots of character to it. Hard as a rock. Lots of character. Okay, back in here for real on this thing. Just get this bottom turned out of here. The number one hollower is great because it allows you to reach really far over the tool rest. And I'm going to move it in a little bit closer. I want as close as I can get. I'm already about 3 inches over the tool rest. I'll take this tailstock off too. Move that controller. Make myself a little more room to work. Hopefully my shoulder's not in the way. Try and keep my head out of the way there. So there's plenty of wood in the bottom of this. No problem there. Alright, let's see what we're looking like down in there. Okay, that's pretty close. Still got a little bit of a hump in the middle. I'm going to take a little bit more out. I'm going to have to reach in. Do I have a curve cutter with a negative rake on it? I do not. I'm going to come down these walls. I'm going to excuse my shoulder. And one thing I want to show you, how I'm using the tool. It's just me. So I hold the tool with my hand up in here and the handle underneath my arm so that I can get all the leverage I want with it with my shoulder. So that when I'm way down deep like this, I've got plenty of leverage. Because the tool's about 3 inches over the tool rest. Okay. Let's see, take a quick check here and see what this does for my inner mold piece. Okay, so we've got a little bit more relief to go there. Just make that inside bottom bigger. The top is fine. If I take you up here, you see the top is fine, but I need to take some more out going down towards the bottom and all that good stuff. All right, cool beans. So this won't take too much longer. Here's what I'm going to do so that I'm not putting my shoulder in the way so much. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. Like so that you can see me working in there. You can still see the piece, and my shoulder shouldn't be in my head in the shot quite so much. Maybe not completely gone. What would happen if if I would put something like that in a bucket filled with the resin and just let it set for a few days until it hardens? You're talking about epoxy type resin or urethane casting resins, Jeff? If you put it in a bucket, just let it sit, you probably would have bubbles because this piece is so porous. Though theoretically we stabilized it and we've removed all the air, but because it has so many undulations and all these pockets here for air to be trapped, you're going to have bubbles, and there's a good chance you could end up with bubbles in your casting. Now that being said, the resin I use, the Chroma resin that Spydercraft carries, has a long open time, a 2-hour open time, which does give the bubbles an opportunity to evacuate. But it's not a guarantee that you're going to get rid of all of the bubbles without putting pressure to it on a larger cast like this. Good morning, Lorianne. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in. All right, let's see if we can't go down the wall of this. Make this a little bit bigger down in here and keep my shoulder out of the way. It looks like I'm looking at one of my monitors. It should be okay. Make sure I've got everything locked down. Everything's snug. Put my controller up there. And I'm just going to lean on this pretty hard. And I can see my shoulders not in the way. It's the beauty of having a rotating headstock on the machine. There is a lot of bounce because of the void in here. what I'm after is enough room for the resin to flow past the inner mold. Call it the displacement mold. And so now we can stop and check this each time real quick. The tool rest out of the way. I lose more things that are right in front of me. There we go. Okay, we're getting close. A little bit more though. Can I use, Carolyn says, Ceylon, can I use my automotive vacuum pump with your pots? I do not know. Does it pull about 29 inches of vacuum? Something like that. Without knowing what your automotive vacuum pump really is, it's kind of hard for me to say yes or no. Not knowing exactly what you've got, I guess it's possible if it has enough vacuum to it. For the vacuum chambers, the pressure pot, you just need an air compressor. All right, let's get some more of this out of here. Now I'm leaning on this really hard. I'm pushing very hard. So Joe says he uses an automotive AC vac pump on a glass vac chamber. So it sounds like the answer is yes. Okay, so now I am getting to where I want to be. I have I'm going to take just a fuzz more out because I've got holes in here. This is a beautiful piece of wood inside. I'm going to put some more denatured alcohol on it just to see what the wood looks like. I love this wood once I've rotted it and all that stuff. So I'm going to take just a little bit more out of this and clean up this wall. Again, most of the resin is going to get turned away with the exception of the voids. Okay? The resin is just filling the voids. I know it's a lot of work to fill the voids, but then again, anything that's worth doing is usually a lot of work. Well, I'm going to see if I can turn this up a bit and not get hurt. See if I can deal with some of that bounce in the opening. So I've just turned it up to about 1,000 RPMs. Okay, I think that's going to put me where I want to be. Yep, I have room for the resin. I do want to take a little bit more. I know I'm picky. Right in this little corner right here, I'm touching on the roll of my inner mold. So just one little bit more in that corner right there. Make sure I'm still in the right height. Just a little teeny bit more. Jeff says, what's my favorite RPMs to work with? Wide open. WFO. When safe. Yes, Rich says I set my speed knob to 11. How'd you know that, Rich? I have a Spinal Tap controller here. But quite honestly, Jeff, yes, you want to turn, it turns best. The faster you can turn a piece safely, and I do emphasize safely, there are limits. The faster the piece is spinning, the cleaner the wood will cut. Less things will bounce around, especially in open void areas. It makes a big difference. But you have to look at the structure of the wood to make sure it's not going to fly apart. If you're doing something that it could come apart, I was standing obviously back over here, pretty far away, and the rotation is over here. It's going to hit that monitor and that wall. So I say, as fast as it'll go, but there's a little bit of sanity in that as well. Okay, I think I'm going to leave that right there. I think I'm happy. All my guitar amps and my bass amp and everything, when I used to have the Rock Band, Rich, everything went to 11. Absolutely. We had the magic marker on there. It was fun playing in a rock and roll blues band. Back when I was younger, I was a bass player. And no matter how quiet we started out when we were playing, either practicing or playing at a party or a club or something, it always ended up at 11 by the end of the night. It's just the way it is. Okay, I think I'm happy with this guy that we have here. So let's take that out. All right. It'd be fun. I don't have a scale. I wish I'd have brought it. I wish I would have weighed this. This probably weighs 3 pounds. I'm guessing maybe 4, is because of all the resin in it. The other thing I wanted to do, I wanted to show you some of the color down inside here. So let's pop into the overhead real quick, and let's see what this looks like. There's all kinds of wormholes and just all kinds of cool stuff in here. So we'll flood that with a little alcohol. And hopefully you can kind of see those wormholes and all pop up. That's what I like about aged wood. It gets a character that you just can't get anywhere else. Put you on this camera here, you can see in there pretty good. There we go. I don't know, it sounds weird, but I kind of like rotting wood. I mean, like making wood rot out there and then going through this process with it, because I get a piece that is one of kind. Nothing else like it, guaranteed. Is there only one in this world like that? All right, so let's clear a few things out here and get ready for some resin casting, resin mixing. Make a little room. Now, I don't recommend that you mix in everything on your lathe, but I only have so much room in this studio, so I have a board or two that I put on here and kind of cover things up. I have a work table right out here where things are that helps me out. How am I doing on time? Time is 11:50, 12 o'clock. So I got an hour to cast. We should be fine. So first things first. We're going to double check everything here. That goes into there. That goes into there. Okay. Now here's how my idea works. To keep this from floating, to keep my inner piece from floating, I like to use skewers. Now, my skewers aren't long enough today to go all the way across this piece, although they're close. If I go to the very top, they will. And I'll drill holes right through the side of this and right through the side of this, and I'll skewer that piece so that it won't float. The wood itself is not going to float at all, none whatsoever. Okay, so that's my next, I think that's my next move. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker here, and I'm just going to kind of go around. This is going to be a little tricky. And I'm just going to make a general reference mark right there. Okay. And I'm going to look at the side here, and I can see that this line, it's nice that this bucket mold, excuse me, it's nice that this mold has ribs on it. And looking at a rib, I believe I can go right in the middle of that last little rib. So we're just going to kind of divide these. This doesn't have to be exact rocket science. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And now we can do a little drilling, and I'll make 4 marks on here. There's one there. There's one there. One there. And one there. I know it looks crude, but hey, it's pretty effective. I've had good success with this little crazy little method of holding things down. Now it does work better. This is the first time I've had them where they don't reach all the way across. So we'll see what happens. Get this out of the way. What if you added weight inside the jar of rocks? You can do weight. I don't have enough weight here right now for this one. Rich and I talk about lead shot works well. Rocks, sort of. Glass balls. So you can weight things down. I think that's 4. All right. So once we've tested our little setup here, we'll take it apart and we'll spray mold release on the inside of the mold. I keep wanting to call it a bucket, but it's a mold. And the outside of this mold. So let's see how my theory is going to work out today. Now, I may end up, I do have rocks. The other thing I can do is I can take my handy dandy, my weight that I use, which is a chuck, and drop it right on top of this. It works out really well. So that's probably going to try and float a little bit. So what I like to use, because it's really heavy and dense, so there's a little bit of flex to that. This old chuck, this old Barracuda, will sit right on top of that thing after the fact, and nothing's going anywhere. All right, so I mean, I kind of sort of don't even need the skewers. Not really with that in place. If the skewers were long enough to go out the other side, then the skewers work great. This is going to obviously hold it down very, very well. It's not coming up. It's not going to float with that. Okay. So the nice thing about having the skewers in place is that until in the interim, they will hold it from going too far away. Let's see. Rich uses the glass marbles from the bottle from the dollar store. Yes, Dollar Tree. Dollar store is my favorite. Okay, so mold release. This happens to be ejected mold release. This is a generic. Working with the epoxy resin, it doesn't really matter what I use, if it has silicone in it or not. When you're working with a particular resin, make sure you check with the manufacturer's instructions. Like the urethanes can be very specific about what type of mold releases will work with them. You don't want a mold release that is going to make your resin get cloudy or anything like that. This epoxy is very forgiving. When I first started working with it with Chroma, I talked to him and he said just about anything Vaseline. He said aerosol Vaseline would be the best. I said, well, I haven't yet to find aerosol Vaseline. I've used Tire Shine. I've used all kinds of things. I have two different mold releases here. One is Smooth On Universal Mold Release, and I just grab whichever can comes first. They both do the trick for me very well. All right, we'll set those off and let them be drying. Now, I do anticipate having to mix a second batch of resin. I like to keep it fairly small to work with, and I've got a long open time, so I'm not terribly concerned in that regard. Let me get out one of my work tables here, my work boards for the top of the lathe. This lathe has a hard life. Especially from being on the road. All right, so for me to mix resin, this is a 2-part epoxy, and it is 2-to-1. So I use my favorite yogurt cups. They're 5 ounces apiece, approximately. 5.3 if you want to be exact. And I just lay them out. 1 is hardener, 2 is resin. Makes it real simple. I fill to the same point on each one. I'll pop into the overhead there for you. So this is not a water clear. It is a slightly amber resin. Now this resin has been at the same temperature since yesterday afternoon. I left the air on last night. It is important that your resin be stable at the temperature, and it's probably 72, 75 in here. It's quite comfortable right now with the air running. And it will stay that way throughout our process here today. Once it's in the pot, I don't worry about it if it goes up a little bit. So here's a little interesting tip. If you're using yogurt cups, you notice that this one looks to be a slightly different color than that, but you watch it come out of the same jug at the same time. It's just that one of them has the wrapper around it and one of them doesn't. Okay? And I even went, while I was at the Dollar Tree, and picked up some handy dandy $1 mixing containers. It's actually something for pets. It has a lid, but I decided it was going to become a mixing bowl for today. And now if I need to make more resin, I'll just reuse these same 3 cups. I'll scrape this down really well. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to mix this resin in this big container, then I'm going to pour it over into a smaller one more than likely, just to make it easier to pour. And that cover's coming off. So scrape that out really well. If you're really careful, you won't get any of this on your hands. You should wear gloves so you don't get it all over you. I'm always bad about, I just like to get going. And I've got my gloves. Actually, my gloves are in the van from a demo before I went on vacation up in Augusta. I was up doing a demo for the Savannah River woodturners, and we did some color stuff. And I made a goofy piece. We had a great time. But anyway, my gloves are still in the travel box in the van, so I don't have them available anyway. Okay, we're going to set that guy over there. Now, my favorite mixer, again, this is a dollar store item, is these plastic coated cheap whisks that are about $1. I just like the way they work more than a stick. I get a really good mix with them. Now, talking about air, and we'll just pop here for a minute while I'm mixing this. I am now in the process of mixing air into this resin, which is a bad thing, okay? If I wanted to take the time today, I could take out my vacuum pump and a vacuum chamber, and maybe I'll do this real quick. So do we have the time? It is 12:10. I want to show you how much air is in this resin. It'd be kind of a quick little thing. I still have another pot here that I didn't have to cut in half. So you can degas your resin if you are so inclined. And it will take a lot of the air out before it ever goes into your casting and into your vacuum chamber, or excuse me, into your pressure pot. So degassing your resin is not a bad idea. Now here's the deal. If you're using a fast setting resin, the Illuminite lines in the 7, 15, even 20-minute kind of stuff, you don't have that option to degas. This resin, again, has a 2-hour open time, so we can degas this. There's a trade-off for everything, so it takes a lot longer for this to start to set, but you've got more time to do things with it, okay? So, that being said, color. I'm going for this is marine blue. This is the Chroma Craft tint. And I want this to be very translucent. So I give it a good shake. And I'm going to go with 1 drop to start. Because I don't want a lot of color. Just enough to make it start to look blue. Drop number 2 went on the stir. I'm really going for it to be more of a tint. And those are just gravity drops. That's 3. Starting to get a blue tint to 15 ounces. There's 4. Because with my blue resin tint and my yellow stabilizing resin, I think I'm going to go 1 more drop. So we're going to go 5, a nice odd number. Gravity drop. There, that's got just a little tint of marine blue to it. All right. Now, the real question today, I want, boy, there's not much of that, is there? I grabbed that and there's not much there. This is my iridescent gold. And so I'm just going to take that much on my little gold spoon. And that will lend a little gold color to it, and it will bounce off of the wood. And I have just about that much again left in the jar. So if I need to make another batch, I'll be able to. Okay. So just a little bit of iridescent powder in there. Just for fun. And I'm going to set this over here. And we're gonna degas this real quick. So I'll grab the pump and plug her back in. I've not done this out here live before to do a degassing, so this will be the first one. Always first time for anything. I have a 2-gallon pot here that I think this will fit in. I hope this bucket fits in there. Yes. Perfect. Alrighty. Looks like it's simmering. Exactly. It's about to simmer some more. So when I first was learning, and some of that is from the Chroma key. If I turn off the Chroma key, that simmer will stop because it's got a little blue tint to it. We don't want you to get false bubbles. I'm watching the monitor, that'll go away. There you go. I turned off the Chroma key that's affecting that. Okay, when I first started with ChromaCraft, selling the product to chemists, I'll turn it back on for a second. The chemist, I went over and spent a day with the chemist, and he was explaining all the different ways and things and how to work with the resins. And this is where I got my initial education on the air and bubbles. And it really surprised me how much air we just put into that just by stirring in those ingredients. And, you know, we mixed some glitter. He said, "Now, how much air do you think is going to be in here from this glitter?" I thought, "I don't know. I don't think much." And so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it doesn't make a liar out of me. I think we'll see a lot of air come out of this when we turn on the pump. So here we go. Let's pop back over to the overhead. And I think I have everything hooked up properly. It's nice. That's one of the things I like about this resin. We turn off the key. One of the things I like about this resin is it gives me time to work. What you're seeing on at first is just the shimmer. Now you'll see the air start to come up. There we go. It gives me time to show you these different properties and the techniques without having to hurry along, because my resin's going to set up in 7 minutes or in 15 minutes. So you can see how much air. So all the air is as much air as we can possibly remove prior to going into our pressure pot. And I'm gonna, while that's degassing, I'm gonna get my pressure pot kind of pulled out over here. The more air that we can get out of the resin in the first place, the less work the pressure pot has to do. Okay? Which is a good thing. So yeah, you can see how much air is being pulled out of that resin. Now our piece, which by nature is full of all these convolutions and pockets, all these surfaces are holding air molecules, all right? And so they lend to the problem of air bubbles. So any air we can remove here is going to help reduce the work that the pressure pot has to do. And so I really like this option when I have the time to do it, and using a slow cure resin, this is one of the advantages to it. The disadvantage is you can't have it back out of the pot, you know, in 4 hours. So there's pros and cons to all the different ones. And I think that this will amaze people as they see how much air is in this resin. And I don't know how long it'll take for it to actually degas, if it will, you know, completely come out of there or not. At some point we'll have to move along. We'll give it a few minutes. So I'm wide open to questions while we're doing the degas here. Just pop it in the chat column there, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube, and I'll see it pop up on my monitor over there, and we'll be happy to answer any kind of questions that you might have. Don's Chroma key cool in the mix. Yeah, it makes a shimmer, but then again, it doesn't give you the real deal. And people wonder, do you have to, this is a good example also, can you put another bucket inside your vacuum chamber? And the answer obviously is yes. You don't have to have a mess in your vacuum chamber. So theoretically, had I put this piece in another bucket in my vacuum chamber, I wouldn't have lost an aluminum pot. I would have lost a plastic container that the resin was in. So there's lots of different variables to things like that. So that's a lot of air in that resin. And so when people ask, well, what's the difference between the vacuum chamber and the pressure pot, and do you need both? So these bubbles, this amount of air, these air molecules, had I poured them straight into the pressure pot, would be having to be compressed by the 70 pounds of air in the pressure pot. And so here we're removing them with the vacuum ahead of time. So just for yucks, I'm going to bleed this off and see what happens, and then so we bleed that off. And pull it back on. And if you're wondering, I'll tell you how much vacuum we're pulling here today. I think I'm 180 feet above sea level. How accurate are these gauges? I don't think they're in laboratory quality gauges. Will the mold fit in the vac? That mold that I'm using today would not fit in this vacuum chamber, no. This gauge is showing is pulling or so, which isn't too bad. Now the gauge that is on the other one, it would go a little over 30, so I know it's not actually accurate. You can bleed your gauges right here. You can adjust them to your elevation and your barometric change and all that. Kirk says, did Chromacraft quit making the grain fillers? The grain fillers as in the accent paste? They haven't, well, yes they have. There's still some left in stock. I've campaigned hard to keep it, and I think this is what you're referring to. I'm going over to my cabinet. Kirk, if you're referring to the accent paste like this, they have stopped producing it. There is some left. I have some. Spycraft has some in stock, and Chromacraft has some in stock. But they're not going to apparently make any more, which I think is unfortunate because I really liked working with it. Yep. So whatever Spycraft has and whatever Chromacraft has in stock is what's left, unfortunately. Unless I tell them I want to buy a whole bunch of it, then maybe they'd make me some more. I really liked it. They've gone, their emphasis is on the Chroma Gilt, which is a great product. It just works differently, and the Chroma Gilt really is not a grain filler type of product. Okay, so in the essence of time, because it's 12:23, at least you can see what the pressure pot is going to have to get rid of. All right. I'm not going to sit here and wait for that to all go away. I mean, I could, because I just mixed it and I've got a couple of hours, so I could get all that out of there, but we're not going to, because I may have to mix up another batch and I don't want to run too long. But I'm glad you got to see that and how that works, because like I say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to be mixing up another batch. All right? Go away, fly. So here goes my piece into the mold. Mold has the mold release on it. All right. my jar. I am going to put my skewers in just to hold the jar down slightly while I'm filling and probably mixing some more. Then I'll put the weight on it at the last minute before I put it into the pressure pot. So, that holds, at least it won't float totally. Okay. So, 15 ounces of resin, 5 drops of blue, 1 small scoop of iridescent gold. And obviously that's going to take all of that. And then some, so I'll just go with another full 15. I'm going to move this over here out of the way. Just let that kind of drain down in there. And we'll mix up another batch here real quick. Bring out my cups again, hardener, 2 resins. Another quick 15. We won't degas, but I'm glad I took the time to do that for you and put it on tape, so to speak, so that people can see just what happens by just stirring the resin. Just stirring in a little bit of tint and a little bit of powder. And even if you just stirred the resin in general just to mix it, you would end up with that same effect going on. You'd have that much air in it. So Rich, I know Rich did a big pour on a holoform, and I can't remember how much resin he used. If you're still in here, Rich, you can tell us. So this is 30 ounces, so we're headed for a quart of resin in this particular pour, and I think we're going to be pretty close at a quart, give or take. We'll see, which isn't too bad. Again, if you didn't do the displacement piece of mold in the middle, you would use whatever the volume of that thing literally is again. So my methodology here, it really is to only use as much resin as you need to. It's actually, I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not expensive, but we sure don't want to be wasteful. I see a lot of people cast things, big giant blocks or whatever, or bowls, and then they turn 90% of it away, just like we do with wood. And if you can find a way to cast to where you're only using what you really need, and then some. So I mean, obviously I've got extra around the perimeters in the bottom, and that's okay, because that does give us the opportunity to alter the shape of the piece. When it's all said and done, we can change the shape because we have a little bit of extra material in the bottom profile. So if we want to cut it, and we'll have extra material at the top. So we can change the overall shape of our piece if we want to, and yet we haven't used an exorbitant amount of extra resin. All right, that real quick like that. And our 5 drops it was. Shake this up real good again. 5 gravity drops. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not scientific by any means. And 5. And just a little scoop. 48 ounces, and then the next size down, so whatever that total is. We'll call it mildly substantial, Rich. Yeah, great for putting the link up there so people can see it. That's cool. So again, just a little bit in the golden spoon. Get out the aerator, whisker. And I like this because I can scrape the sides with the wires, get a good mix, and I can turn it up on its side and really mix it well. And they're all of $1. So when they get good and crudded up, well, you just throw them away. Okay. So just that little tint of gold in there, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty cool. The purpose of the blue dye, Jeff, is just a little color in the resin so it's not clear. And also because I have, in this case, yellow stabilizing resin crystals up to it. It's going to give me some contrast. It might turn into a bit of a green. You could make it opaque if you wanted to. It just adds a color component to the piece to make it more decorative. And we've got 16 colors of resin tints that are available to color in any kind of shade you want. So we'll come back over here with our piece in the pot. And we come back up or come back in, and I see it starting to float up my centerpiece, which is perfect. And I don't mind. I want this to go a little bit over the top of the wood, and I'm going to let this flow all the way around. And when I push this down, so here's the real question. Am I going to be just right? Am I going to be short by a tick of an ounce? You know? This looks just about perfect. When I push down hard on this, it looks like I'm getting coverage right over the top, and that's like no waste. So you can see right here the last little bit is filling in. I don't need it any taller than the top. Okay? So when I put my weight on here, that's going to hold it down. And it wiggles a little bit in the mold, if you will. Again, if it's right at the top, I don't need to mix any more. So you can, and we could theoretically, if this would fit in the vacuum chamber, we still have time. I mean, this is only about 25 minutes into the mix. Will you cast the yellow stabilizer in epoxy? The yellow stabilizer. I use. To Art's question, Art, I used Turntex, which is the maker of cactus juice. I used their dye in this. And I've been working with the Chroma, and I now have a dye from Chroma for stabilizing, and I haven't tested it yet. I got to go over and pick some up. We've been working on this for a while, and I'm going to bring some in, and I'm going to start testing with it. So the stabilizing dye does not go into the epoxies. It is a different type of dye. The stabilizing resin can actually be cleaned up with water, soap and water. The chunk you just had in your hand, It was already dyed with the yellow. There was yellow stabilizing dye in that. Yeah, Rich, you're just a little shy. I mean, it's actually, now that it's sitting there. I mean, I could if I had my thimbles. Let me see if I got my thimbles. I could make a thimble, a 3 thimble mix, if I have them here. Oh, I do. So this will be just enough. This is how I do when I come up just a little teeny bit short, guys. I'll make what I call a thimble mix. I'm going to set this off for a second. These are little teeny. Guess where these come from? They're real small. They're like an ounce. They come from the Dollar Tree. And so we'll make just a little teeny bit more. And that'll be enough to be sure that we're covered sufficiently. There we go. If the epoxy is not exact, it's okay. You want to be close. Doesn't have to be to the infinitesimal ounce exactly the same. You just want to be real close. That'll work for what we're doing here. Okay. And what I'll do with these is I'll just mix these in one of these cups to keep everything just reduced in size. Always save the plastic shot glasses, absolutely. So this is going to make 3 ounces, which will be just enough to take care of the issue there. And again, you know, like I said, I'm real happy working with this particular product because I have the time to mix more and know that it's not setting up on me, and it'll go into the pot and do just fine. And like I say, thank goodness I have the air conditioner running and it's quite comfortable in here. The air temperature, if you figure out your timings, and then at a certain air temperature, and then your air temperature changes, it can make a big effect on what's going on. I'll pop this back up here for a second. So let's say this room is typically 75 degrees. And for this resin, I want to have distinct colors separation when I pour it. I need to turn on my green screen, like that wall, to have distinct colors and not have them blend. I have to wait till this resin starts to have its thermal reaction. So I have to wait, and I take a digital thermometer and I measure the temperature. And so at 75 degrees, I'll watch and watch and watch, and somewhere between 115 and 130 is where when it's exotherming at that temperature, I'll go ahead and make my pour for distinctly different colors. In this case today, we're doing one single color, so it's not an issue. So we're going to add 1 drop of blue to this. And that's going to be a little bit darker, but it's all right. This will get spread across the top. So you do have to, keep track if you want to do multiple colors. That's where it's a little more complicated. Whereas with your fast setting resins, they don't have time to merge and meld together. Okay. And I'm not going to bother to put any pearl powder in this. And we'll just pour, oh, let me get back over here, turn off the key, and we'll just pour this in. And that should be enough to keep my piece submerged. Now it's sitting a little crooked for some reason. I knew that I should have flattened out the non-business side, the very end of the tenon, but I didn't. And that's going to have to be life. So I have my coverage covering the whole top. And I will readjust this again when I put it into the pressure pot. Which is ready to go into the pressure pot. Now the pressure pot's kind of right here next to me. I don't have a camera on it, but you can see the setup there. So this extra resin up here at the top, yeah, that'll be extra and that'll get turned away. Duct tap in place. Duct tap. I got duct tape, I think. Michael says you signed up for Spot Brother. Yes, Spirecraft has a 4-square and supposed to be end cap booth like we had last year. Hey, Jim Brinkman popped in here. Have you ever used a digital scale to mix? Not with this, Jim, because this is by volume, not by weight. The urethanes like Lumelite, it's by weight. Chromacraft Epoxy is by volume. So they always recommend using volume and not a scale. All right, let's get this guy over here to the pressure pot. Everybody's seen enough, as much as they want to of that. I'll give you a beautiful side view of what that guy looks like sitting in there. It's a thing of beauty using that old chuck, isn't it? Okay, so pop this back over here, and I'm just going to come over here to my pressure pot. Drop her right down in there. Level it up. I've got another subfloor in my pressure pot, if you will. So I just kind of adjust everything there. There we go. And I will close that up and put the air to it when we're all done here. No need in me, fussing. I got plenty of time there, so I'm not worried about it setting up on me or anything like that. So I set it into the pressure pot, so it's in its home for the next 24 hours. Now, actually, it will be set. It starts to set in about 2 hours, so it's whatever time it is, 12:42. 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I could actually take it out of the pot. But I usually just let it sit in there at 70 pounds overnight. And I do pressurize it up to 70 pounds for its compression. And the sooner I put the air to it, the better. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here in just a minute, and we'll take care of that. This has been a fun one. I'm glad, in a way. I'm sad to lose aluminum vacuum chamber because of my mistake. But I'm glad that you got to see how I worked through it and that the piece is still fully usable and continue on with the project. Now, is it exactly the same as what I planned? No, it's not exactly the same as what I had planned to start with. I had some plans to put some maybe some iridescent paints on the wood surfaces in the voids and whatnot. But since I had ended up with the yellow crystal there, I said, I'll just go with that. And see what I get. It'll still be interesting. Hopefully it looks great. It might not. Who knows? It'll still be a fun bowl. It's a great process. And it's always good to know that there are workarounds or work-throughs that will help you save a piece. That's in everything I've ever done, the different businesses I've had in my inflatable boat business where I used to design boats. Working through when something didn't work right and still make it come out right in the end. Is always a good way to go, and you can save a lot of things. Now, if you're trying to make money, Here's where it gets a little tricky. If you're trying to make money with your turnings, say you have a split piece. We were talking earlier, someone was asking about filling cracks and stuff like that. When it starts adding time to the project, and if you have to make money and time is money, if you value your time, it becomes a little more complicated, and the question becomes, can you get the return for the extra time? So like yesterday, I spent probably 2 hours cutting the pot apart and chipping out the resin and things like that. So if I was still back in my trade show or my craft show days, that would have added 2 hours or $200 to the piece. I don't believe that I could add $200 to that piece in sale price for what I had to go through. But since I'm not selling it, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. Unless it came out really, really cool, then maybe I can get that time back. Okay? So, it always kind of depends on what your goals are, what you're doing with it. And if you're trying to make money, keep an eye on that. As far as is it still of value? Sometimes it's cheaper to throw them out. So when I was turning a lot, then I was sharing a shop with my dad, and if I had a piece crack, I would just toss it over to Dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, here's another piece for you." He'd fill the cracks and have fun with it. Because if I started filling cracks on an inexpensive piece, I couldn't get my money, my time back out of it. In this case, it's not an issue. It's an art piece, and I'm just going to keep it around the house and have fun with it. Who knows what we'll put in it. More importantly is the education that you got by seeing how we can work with things and fix things and correct something that went south on you and still make a nice piece out of it. So I think it's going to come out really cool. We'll see. I'll post pictures of it on Spiracraft and in the Spiracraft group and Instagram tomorrow when I take it out of the pot. I'll pop it out in the sun and we'll snap some pictures of it. Next Monday for Monday Methods, we'll turn the piece. We'll get in here and do the final turning on it. And I don't know if we'll be polishing it or not. I might just shoot some lacquer at it. But we'll turn this piece next week on Monday Methods. I'm not going on vacation anytime soon for a while now. I appreciate everybody coming today. And it looks like the time is getting pretty close. My door got in the way there, 12:46. Yeah. I had a ball. I hope you enjoyed. And if you are a member of the Spiracraft's wood and resin turning community on Facebook, Thursday night I'll be out here in a live video conference with Google Meet, kind of like Zoom. And if you've got questions, we sit here and chat for an hour at 7 o'clock on Thursdays. Later, Rich. Go to work. Have fun. Thank you for dropping in. Talk to you soon. Thursday nights, I'm out here again, like I say, in the video conference. If you're not a member of the Spiracraft Wood and Resin Turning community, just search for that on Facebook. You'll find the community and myself or Art. We'll let you in as a member, and we'll have fun on Thursday. And I do specials in there, different things Spiracraft does in there. It is a private group, so you have to be let in, and we had one rogue guy get in there somehow about a week or two ago. I don't know how he got in there, but we took care of all this post. He was trying to sell some junk to us. But welcome to social media. All right. Yes. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Let's wrap this up, and I will see you all on Thursday or next Monday. Have a great week. Stay safe. Be healthy. Have fun. Keep turning. And I'll see you next week. And I'm going to leave you with an overhead shot of my disaster. How's that? I'll leave you with an overhead shot of my disaster as I walk to turn off the keys. All right. Thank you, Don.